Welcome to Rauta's Black Metal Dual Review, meaning we have two different albums here in review, the one on the same video, and this time it makes a lot of sense. These two albums could really be siblings to one another for the very reason it seems like both of these albums feature songs taken from the same batch, if you will, and then just released on two different albums. The band in question is Denevér, which is a one-man project more or less. While it seems though that besides the official information there are more members participating on these albums. The albums we have here, I will show you, is one called Vámpír, and then the other ones which is here titled in two different languages, vérivók krónikái, or Chronicles of the Blood Drinkers. So vampiric themes are very much present here, and that is not a bad idea at all, by no means, quite the contrary. The thing here is, this is very, very traditional black metal when it comes to the music, and one could say there is certain European feeling to this all, but saying European doesn't really mean much unless you really go for a little bit more details, and as you're going to figure out from the lyrics themselves or titles, song titles that is, this is not your typical Nordic black metal. Quite the contrary, this is actually more on the Eastern Europe side of things, and as such the overall result is a little bit different. Now that alone doesn't really mean much. I mean, even Eastern Europe is more complex thing, just saying like, yeah, these are some old communist states or whatever back in the 80s, because while Eastern Bloc was often used to describe a certain mindset, being Slavic or whatnot, we have to understand that being big countries and various different cultural differences, saying something is from the Eastern Europe side of things doesn't really mean more than saying, yeah, it's one of non-Nordic countries. The thing here is, the scenes are big and vast, and different people of course go for different outputs. Now this disclaimer being said is just my way to talk a little bit on the side of things while I'm showing to you what we have here, and these two albums, like I said, are very, very much akin to one another, and the thing here is fast black metal. Now that alone doesn't really describe this all really fully, so I'll try to go on for more detail. I would say take a little bit Marduk, take a little bit of Dark Funeral, take a little bit of Gorgoroth, add that to the Eastern European black metal in the mix, and you have roughly an idea what's going on with the band. So Denevér comes from Hungary and was more or less, according to Metal Archives anyway, founded around 2020. And since this is mostly just one member, Tibor Derebesi being the artist name here, operated since 2020, these two albums came out back to back, 2022 and 2023. Now there's nothing uncommon in that obviously, but I could say maybe a little bit more time, maybe a little bit more demoing could have been in place, because now it seems like this album are very much like one trick pony made into two albums, and that's the main problem with the one being the band itself. Now the overall thing here is, at first when you start listening you will be like, yeah, this is not your ordinary Norwegian or Swedish black metal one, but yeah, very fierce, very fast tempo, intense riffing, and kind of a dark atmosphere. But if you really go deeper into that, give these multiple listens like I did, and just start focusing on the stuff here, you will quickly figure it out. These are all just more or less one song with very little variation. Now, of course, there are differences when it comes to down riffs, and whether it's tremolo, picking kind of stuff, or just fast-paced, buzzing guitars. Overall, it's evident that all these songs are basically made with blast beat. And while that might work for albums such as Panzer Division Marduk, by Marduk obviously, well, unless you really have those killer riffs one after another, and intense lyrics to go with that, with intense vocal approach and a production that really supports it, it's not gonna fly that far. More than a chicken flight, Denevér is more like failing to understand what makes these super fast albums interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like fast albums, but more often than that, I like variation. Like if you take a typical Dark Funeral album, which of course has this big band production, sometimes called overproduce, or production, the problem here is, if you don't really have good riffs, the blast piece is not going to save it. Quite the contrary, it's just gonna destroy some of the feeling, because when every song is like ta 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 ta, the kind of a thing, when you have like some 220 BPM or whatever, it's gonna start sounding the same. So instead of adding to intensity, adding to impact and creating aggression, it's just gonna feel a little bit boring. It's just like some high tempo stuff which kind of loses the momentum. While if you just do everything with that, just listen to some the Berserker albums, for instance, it's not that kind of extreme feeling after a while. You would start yearning for more. Maybe you will go into harsh noise and say, yeah, no blast beating black metal has nothing on this stuff, etc., etc. The point here is, it starts to sound the same, and that's when it becomes somewhat boring. Now, most of the riffs with these albums, Vámpír or the other one with Denevér, they're not bad, but they are nothing out of ordinary. They're not like, wow, these are really creative, these are really killer, these are really catchy, these are really memorable. Actually, none of that. Whilst being that said, however, I have to say none of that material is weird or boring or outright bad. It's just kind of a monotone, and that can really get into you. I mean, and not in a good way though, more like a bad way. Like after a while you're just like, this doesn't make a big impact on me. So I'm gonna say it in this way. These albums are very easy to listen to and at first kind of get into after a while. But maybe after 15-20 minutes you will figure out it's not gonna change. And when, for example, this Vámpír album is almost 47 minutes. It's way too much given to material on these albums. So I would say, yeah, this band should have done a couple of demos to figure out which songs are better than the rest, which riffs are better than the others, and just, I don't know, cut it somewhere maybe 30-35 minutes, because after a while it really gets too repetitive, especially if you listen to these albums back to back as I did for this tour review. So would this verdict be different if I just had reviewed one album? Not really, because I've been listening to a lot of these kind of albums past 30 years, and after a while it doesn't really make a lasting impact. Like I said, Panzerdivision Marduk some 20 plus years ago was a wow moment, but they still have the riffs. That album still feels like a killer to me, not a boring one. Whereas Denevér is just trying to copy the same idea, but not with the riffs or production or the vocals or whatever that is over even near to that stuff. So if you like fast-paced black metal, if you like vampires, and you are a little bit more on the lo-fi than production kind of a style of albums, well, this might be your cup of tea and you might be really, really enthusiastic about it. But if you want more variation with the tempos and all, Denevér is not going to shake your tree. It's just going to be one of those bands that you listen to for a while and then you move on and forget it all about it. Now, check out the links provided in the description box and figure out whether you like these yourself or not. I can only give you pointers, not decide for you. So there you have it. Looking forward to your comments and questions. Bye bye.